I thought mechanical engineering was very boring, and I don't
Ooh,
know.
no, absolutely
You
not. Where you guys are doing with a lot more math, which also every discipline that involves any physical object is gonna require some sort of mechanical engineer involved.
Following is a conversation with Madison Smith, who's a mechanical engineer and is about to explain to us all the things she had to go through to learn her technical skills as well as soft skills in mechanical engineering and how they can apply to other areas of engineering as well. She is truly amazing, very knowledgeable person, and has a really, really cool attitude about engineering. So if you're someone who's interested in engineering or learning more about how to succeed in engineering, or you're curious about it, whether a career in engineering is for you or not, this video is for you. So let's go ahead and talk to her.
okay? So hi, Madison. How
Hello.
are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Do you want to introduce yourself pretty quickly?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Madison Ariel Smith. I'm a mechanical engineering student right now, about to graduate. I'm from Kelowna, BC, actually, so Canadian. And I run a TikTok channel called Aerial Views.
Okay, cool. And you study mechanical engineering, right?
Yes, mechanical
And
engineering
which
and focused in biomed as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna start with a hot take because I started out in mechanical engineering and I switched to EE. I thought mechanical engineering was very boring, and I don't
Ooh.
know. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I actually started out my degree general and I was
Okay.
between mechanical and electrical.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took the first electrical engineering course, which was electromagnetism, and I was like, nope, absolutely
You
not.
you
Where
found
why
that
are we getting
boring?
this imaginary stuff here?
Okay, and then like what is it about mechanical engineering that made you think like, okay, this is the thing. Like the reason I say it's boring is because like it's basically things like I don't know, like friction and motion and things that you can kind of see and feel. For you, it was like the other way around, where the EE stuff was boring, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because to me, electrical engineering is all the stuff that I can't see. And it's like for me, if it's like out of sight, out of mind. Like if I can't see it, well,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
It's just not as interesting to me as like what for mechanical I love because now I like can look around the world and see and understand how everything works because I've learned all those different systems. So like, I'm always like looking at HVAC systems on top of roofs and explaining to people how things work. So I love the being able to physically see. And I think I'm a very visual person as well, like very visual learner. I
Yeah.
love to paint. Like I'm really into arts and I think being very visual, like to me, that's so much more interesting than the abstract concepts of electrical engineering where you guys are doing with a lot more math and things that we can't see and
Yeah.
imaginary worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, so you said you have a interest in the arts as well. There's like the stereotype that to do really well in engineering, you have to be this kind of, I don't know, tinkering person that was taking things apart when they were a kid. Would you say that was you?
I would say I was definitely not taking things apart. I was a creative person, but it wasn't a stereotypical like engineering path. I didn't think I was going to go into engineering. It wasn't even on my radar, but I definitely really like STEM. But I was more interested in like painting, being creative, doing crafts. I was really always building stuff with cardboard, but mainly for things like Zuzu pets and my stuffed animals. Which I guess you wouldn't typically relate to being going into engineering with those skill sets, but I think that those actually help you become a really good engineer because being creative is a huge aspect of it. I found, especially with design projects, being creative is super helpful. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I think arts, having skills in arts is really helpful for engineering. And I've actually noticed quite a few people that are really good artists that went into engineering, which is not something that I would have thought about
Mm-hmm.
before that I came to university. Like you do think that everyone's going to be the stereotypical kind of nerd who's just good at math and science, maybe not the best people skills.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that you're saying that's not the case. Like you could still do well in
No,
engineering if you're not this typical nerdy math science genius.
and there's the place for those type of people, but I think within engineering there's just such a diverse group of people, and when you're designing something you need to have the people who are the generators of ideas, the person who's the implementer, and the person who's like the optimizer. So people kind of fit in those different avenues depending on their personality, but all of them are valuable in the design
Yeah,
process.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's very important you mentioned that. And that's actually kind of why I wanted to have you on this channel is because there's this stereotype that to do engineering, you have to be like a genius in math and physics since age like 2, you know.
Yeah,
And
that's what I thought too. Like I honestly thought that if you went into engineering, you had to be a genius. All
yeah,
the
yeah,
way up and
yeah.
probably till grade 10, when I realized people that were above me were going into engineering, it's like, wait a minute, they can go into engineering? Like,
Yeah. So you saw other students doing engineering and you're like, hold on a
yeah.
second, these people are not like math and
Yeah,
physics
they're not
geniuses.
like absurdly, like I'm thinking like Einstein, they have to be crazy
Yeah,
super
yeah, yeah,
geniuses.
yeah.
Like it's way too challenging. But then there was people that I knew in person that were going into these programs. And I was like, well, if they can do it, I could probably do it too, or at least try it out, right?
Yeah, and like were you looking at other alternatives outside of engineering in high school, like before you started out?
I was definitely interested in biology. I
Okay,
knew I wanted to go into STEM from a young age because I just always loved math and science. But I knew it was going to be something science biomed probably related, which is
sure.
kind of leads into the mechanical engineering biomed. But I was also interested in like aerospace and planes, and I even looked into being like a firefighter or
Oh, cool.
paramedic. I was really wanting to be paramedic for a while, so I'm
Oh,
kind of all
cool.
over the place a little bit.
Yeah, you want that adventurous lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I see. And then so you said you did like a specialization in biomed? Is that the
Yes.
case? So what does
Yeah.
that what
So
does
my
that mean? Does that mean like you took a few classes in biomed?
Yeah, so basically my upper year electives are focused in biomed, and I had to take about 3 additional courses on top of my degree, just like anatomy, physiology for engineers. I actually had to take an additional 2 electrical engineering courses
Sure.
because, yeah, you do
You
need to
had
know
to?
that for biomed. I will say biomed is you got to learn bio, you got to learn electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, so it's kind of the crossover between them all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a distinction on my transcript that I did a biomed option at my school.
Yeah,
A
and
lot.
like did that hurt you or harm you or like was neutral when it came to applying for jobs that were not biomed related?
It didn't have any impact because I was fully in the mechanical engineering program. But it did give me an edge depending on the job, if the job had any biomedical related knowledge. Like even for
Sure.
my when I did my interviews with for Train Technologies, which was HVAC, a lot of systems obviously are to do with people being in buildings, and there's a lot of like issues with pathogens being developed in, say, cooling towers. We don't want to be pumping that back into the buildings. So having
Yeah.
knowledge about biomed, for working with the hospitals too, in particular, was actually really helpful when talking to customers or in the interview process. So I'd say it probably, if anything, benefited or was neutral, just depending on the job.
Yeah, and like that's another thing worth mentioning is that like no experience is bad experience. Like nothing is gonna stain your resume or because there's this misconception that oh if I don't choose the right specialty right away and I do like I don't know 3 weeks of working on I don't know like a power electronics project, that means I'm forever labeled as that thing and I can't pivot in something. Would you say that's not the case?
I'd say definitely not. The clear thing is that you got to identify what are the transferable skills, because I think in any experience you have, you've learned some skill that's useful in another position. So just being
Hmm.
able to identify what are the ones that are relevant to the next job you're applying to. So like for my biomed, when I'm talking about that, I'm not going to talk about the biomedical design that I've done because it's not really
Yeah.
relevant. But what about the biomedical concepts that apply to people being in buildings and the specific applications in HVAC? So I think, yeah, just reflecting on that prior to an interview would be helpful. But I definitely think you can pivot. I've heard from our mechanical like chair for our program that the average like mechanical engineer changes like 4 times in their career
Oh
path.
wow, yeah.
So it's not uncommon to pivot, and a lot of things are very transferable, specifically within mechanical. I don't know about electrical, and I'm assuming it's the same.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. It's just that I think with mechanical and electrical, they're the two broadest fields of
Yes.
engineering because of mechanics and electromagnetics, the two branches
Yeah.
of physics. So like there's just so many subfields within each, you know? So like for
Yeah.
example, in electrical engineering, there's like I don't know, you could do power electronics, you could do telecommunications, you could do signal processing, you could do antennas, you could do micro fabricate. Like there's literally a million things you could do. What are some of those subfields, would you say, in mechanical engineering?
Yeah, for mechanical, we've got aerospace, of course,
Okay.
biomed. You could do automotive, nuclear, marine. There's kind of robotics, manufacturing, industrial, controls, environmental, sustainability related engineering. I would say mechanical is because it's to do with physical objects, and
Yeah.
pretty much every discipline involves some of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So basically any field you can go into, which can people kind of say it can be like a problem within mechanical is that you're so broad that are you a master or a jack of all trades, a master of none? But I find people specialize, you tend to end up specializing somewhere by the end of your degree. And for somebody who maybe loves general engineering, doesn't know exactly which path they want to go, I think mechanical is a really great choice because you get exposure to everything and you also aren't closing any doors by going into mechanical. You're just open.
Yeah. I agree. And I think like also an underrated skill is you get such a profound understanding of mechanics, like which is
Yeah.
the most fundamental branch of physics. And that probably alone like you were talking about transferable skills. one that came to my mind is just to be able to like solve problems in general, right? Like are there other like transferable skills, especially technical ones that you can think of that can transfer from like one branch to another, from one opportunity to another?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like fluid mechanics,
Okay.
so many sectors. Fluid mechanics applies thermodynamics, like heat transfers within every sector. I'm sure, like especially with the electrical design, it's really
hmm
important to have heat transfer away from all those electrical systems. So there's a lot of applications for, yeah, heat transfer, fluid mechanics, obviously mechanics and materials, actually understanding what's going on within the materials themselves, which also every discipline that involves any physical object is going to require some sort of mechanical engineer involved. Um, yeah, and then CAD modeling, of course, where you can take anything and model it in a system and perform simulations on that, which is really helpful. And I think that really applies to every industry, that all those skills.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot like the interface where you said, for example, you have to build like I don't know heat sinks and heat designs for electrical circuits. So
Mhm.
have you ever been in a project where you interfaced with like someone who's an electrical engineer, or for example?
Absolutely. Yeah, I that's one thing that I find like on the videos I do about mechanical engineering in the comments, people are always arguing which discipline is
Yeah,
better and
yeah,
hard
yeah.
to, like they're so separate. I'm like, no, we work together all the time. In my classes, it's pretty common that your upper year fourth year classes will be split between mechanical and electrical, specifically in the design classes, because that just is how things work the best. If you have electrical students on your team and mechanical, you can actually make such better products because you have different skills. So yeah, they're definitely not separate, and the interconnection between the disciplines, at least at my school, is like super important and very emphasized, because that's just how it is in the real world. You're going to have an electrical team and a mechanical team. Even in biomed, that's typically how it's done. So you have a focus area, but you're all working together on the same end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why someone like me is like I would joke and say, "Oh, mechanical engineering is boring," or like things of that
Yeah,
nature. That's because that's like what works for me. And I think it's very important. I probably I don't know, you probably get these comments a lot sometimes where probably the most frustrating question I get asked is, "What is the best engineering field?" or what engineering field pays the most?" or and the answer to
Mhm.
that is always like whichever one you like the most. Like would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely the one that you like the most, because you're gonna excel and put more effort into the area that you're naturally good at or that you just have the most passion for. And if for me, if I went into electrical, like I'm not going to absorb the information as well. I'm not going to be as creative because I'm not passionate. Or mechanical, I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah,
So
you're
yeah,
just
I
not
definitely
as
would agree with
curious
that.
about it, right?
Yeah, and I think also if you're trying to go into a degree just for the money, if you end up hating it, you're gonna switch. Like I know people who went into engineering and they absolutely hated it and they switched and went to say computer science and now they're excelling in computer science. So I think it's really important not to pick something based on the pay you think you're gonna get, because if you end up not liking it, you're gonna switch out anyways, and then it was it worth it?
Yeah, I think because like on paper there's this idea of oh if I'm making six figure, who cares what I'm gonna do for 8 hours because I get the other like 6 hours to do
Mhm.
whatever I want. But like have you ever had a job that was like draining or like an internship or some type of work that was just not the most exciting thing in the world? Like have you ever experienced something like that?
I would say my internships have been pretty interesting. But I've definitely had I well one of my jobs that was partly sitting behind the desk. Like I actually did like some social media and a lot of like outreach to different companies. And I really did not like sitting behind my desk just doing like repetitive mundane tasks over and over and over again. I found that not very interesting, which is like why I like mechanical, because it's like I feel like things are always
Yeah.
changing up and you got so much diversity in your days. Site
So so
visits
so
and
that
also
so that like boring desk job, if you were to get paid six figure to do that, would you do it?
no, because you know how many hours of your life you spend at work? Crazy amount. And even like I started to notice, I'm like at the time that I did this job, I was like 20 and I started getting back problems from sitting in a chair so long. Imagine doing that for your whole life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. And
That's a
staring
really
at a
good point.
screen for that long. I mean, I know some people do love that, like, and CAD, if you're really into CAD modeling, that might be part of your job, but
Right.
some people love that. So I guess it's up to
Yeah.
them.
So but that's good because you didn't really know that until you tried it, right? Like it wasn't until you
Mhm.
had that desk job that you realized the reality of the situation, right? So
Yeah.
would you say one good thing that you've done is that it sounds like you didn't just go to your classes and get a high GPA and wait until graduation. You were actively looking for opportunities, internships, jobs, things like that. I'm guessing probably some volunteer work. Like you've probably done stuff experientially that helped you figure out what you want, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think a huge part of your engineering degree to get the most value is to be involved with clubs or extracurriculars of some sort, and of course, do some sort of internship or co-op. I really think that they do teach you the fundamentals while you're in class, but where you get to actually apply those throughout your degree and make the connections that will lead to your jobs and figuring out what actually works for you is in those experiences. Like, I did the Western Engineering competition, and for part of that, it was basically half of Canada's schools were in attendance to qualify for the Canadian engineering competition. And there was just so many different aspects of that. I didn't really know what I was signing up for, honestly, when I did it. But then I got to learn about like sponsorship, negotiations, event planning, logistics. And that's kind of also where I realized that I really enjoy business and as
Oh,
well as
cool.
engineering. So it was a
Yeah.
kind of a fun mix between the two, but there was a lot of skills that you don't even know are out there or opportunities or areas of interest until you just sign yourself up for stuff. That has definitely been my motto my whole degree. It's just like if I see an opportunity, if there's an area that I think I can learn by being part of that opportunity, I just do it. And I know it's tough on top of a full-time course load,
Yeah.
but I think it's really worth it and really important, more than the GPA, I think.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. How did you manage your time? Like, sounds like you've done a lot of extracurriculars, a lot of stuff outside of class, but you still had to do well in your classes. So how did you manage your time?
Yeah, that's always a tough question because I think it's really up to the individual and like what works for you.
Uh-huh.
Like for me, I'm happy to focus on everything else, and if I need to study for my exam, I'll study like 12 hours the day before if I absolutely need to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the best thing is looking realistically at what you have going on for the next 4 months. Like look at your semester, look at when the major due dates are, so you know when those are going to come up, and then see actually where you have time to slot things in because I think sometimes you think you don't actually have time to do it. But if you prioritize it, you do have time. And
Yeah.
my weekends aren't always the most fun. They're not like me going out, drinking with my friends every weekend, but I'm going out and having really interesting experiences, meeting people that are important that led me to getting jobs. So I think and it also is like find something you enjoy doing too. Because if you can find something
Yeah.
that's the two, so you're getting some professional experience, but you also really enjoy it, then it doesn't really feel like it's work. And it can kind of
Yeah.
be a de-stressor instead of an additional stressor.
So don't just pick an extracurricular activity just because it's gonna look good on your like you're gonna spend time doing it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I think people can tell, like, I've had been involved with clubs where people just pick it clearly because they just want it on a resume and they put in the bare minimum effort. And I really don't think they get much out of it in
Mm-hmm.
the end because they didn't put any effort in. They just wanted the title on their resume. And I think that showcases in your interview as well, because they're going to ask you questions about those things and you're not going to have these really interesting takeaways and stories because you were just kind of there for the meeting and then you dip as soon as you could.
Yeah, people can usually tell. Like when I interview students, I can tell instantly who's actually done the work and who has not done the work. Like I think if the company you're interviewing at, like if the manager cannot tell if you're like bullshitting or not, that's a really concerning place to work, you know?
Yeah, you're like, who's the hiring manager?
Like if you want a good job where you'll actually do something meaningful, like you ideally want to be around other smart, talented people, right?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Yeah. So
That's
how
the point of an
like
internship.
yeah, so like out of all the internships you've done, like how important was it for you to be around like great people and how much did you learn just from being around like great talented people, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that you ideally want to be around. It's like that whole
Hmm.
saying of if you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room. So very often, especially when I first started my commercial HVAC job, sitting around the table with all the sales engineers that are all like mechanical engineers and the technicians, and most of the words they're saying, I don't even know. Well, it was all going over my head because the amount of terminology and things that I just didn't quite understand, but I feel like that means you're in the right room because there's a lot for me to learn. And if I went in there and I knew everything already, what's the point of doing the internship in the first place? Um,
Yeah.
and there they also like were really prioritized mentorship, and I think that was really helpful because they were able to identify areas that I wouldn't even have considered to be an important skill set, where they were like, hey, this is really important for you to learn. I'd like you to focus on whatever task it was. So I think it's really important to be around people that also know how to teach as well.
Yeah. Okay. So people who are good at engineering and problem solving, but also can communicate and relay information.
Yeah. Soft skills is one of those things that is incredibly important when you get to the workplace. And it really stands out who has them and who doesn't. Because everything is teamwork, like we said, with mechanical and electrical working together, everything is teamwork, and that involves a lot of what I like to one of my professors doesn't call it soft skills, he calls it human skills, because most of
Yeah.
the skills are to do with human interaction or dealing with humans in some way. So whether it be time management or communication, it's all to do with navigating the fact that we're humans and the interactions that we have and how can we be most productive with each other. And that, is incredibly important in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. Being human is an interesting thing. Do you ever have existential crises?
Uh, probably the most at the beginning of this year because it's my graduating year, and I'm like,
Yeah.
holy,
Yeah.
I no longer have a plan of what I do year to year. It's like I could like the world is your oyster, but also that's kind of scary because there's just so many options. And it's like, am I gonna pick the right one? You
Yeah,
know?
and do you ever like get moments of panic where you're like, wait, did I even pick the right thing? Or am I even going in the right direction? Or are you always like rock solid? Nope, I'm gonna go do this amazing thing and nothing's gonna, because sometimes there's this perception of, especially for example, someone like you or someone like me, if you're posting content online, people have the perception that you got your shit together 100% of the time, like all the time. Would you
Hmm.
say that is the case?
No, definitely not. That's one thing that I also realized is a lot of people like you're just doing your best, but everybody's human and everyone makes mistakes and literally nobody is perfect and knows everything.
Hmm.
So for me that was really freeing as well. Is like just knowing that I'm just gonna go and try my best. Like all I am is human. If I
Yeah.
make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. And I think engineering really teaches you that because you'll have moments where you're on top of the world and like you just ace that exam. That was amazing. I'm so smart. And then you'll have a moment you go in and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
that this makes me want to drop it in
Yeah,
engineering.
you get
That was not my
humbled.
moment.
You get humbled all the time.
Yeah, so yeah, and engineering, I feel like it does make you humble because yeah, everybody going in has been, great at STEM and math and is a good student, very driven, and then you get to engineering and everybody's like,
Yeah, yeah, and it's just like I think that's a really good thing. Like if you're not being humbled, like I think you're just not challenging yourself enough. You're not
yeah,
trying new things, you know? Because I
yeah,
remember when I was an undergrad, I was like first, oh my God, I have to do well in my classes. And I got humbled there. And then I aced that. And then I was like, okay, I gotta get an internship. And I applied for like 500 things. And 2 years later, I got my first. And I got humbled there. And then I went to grad school.
mhm,
I'm like, all right, now I'm the internship king. Let me get a paper or two out. Took me like 3 years to publish a paper. So if you and even now in my current job, like I get humbled all the time. So like do you still experience that even as you're nearing graduation, even as you're about to start your full-time job?
totally, yeah, totally. I think it's just I feel like if anything, it happens kind of more often. Uh, but you get better at dealing with it, and you also understand that like rejection is just part of the learning process. Failure is just part of the learning process. And yeah, you should be failing. Like a lot of my professors say, like at some point you shouldn't be getting everything perfect right away. That's a sign that you're not learning because
Yeah.
everybody should be failing. And I think even like it's a good analogy within engineering design, the amount of iterations we do where we do something and it just completely blows up or fails. But it's like after that, you look, okay, why did that happen? And how can I fix that in the future? And I like to take that same perspective on like if an exam didn't go well or an interview didn't go well, you look back and be like, okay, what were the factors that I maybe could have changed that would have made that go a different route? So it's like an
Yeah.
engineering mindset, but applied to just like your everyday life. And it's so freeing in just knowing that failure is okay. And yeah, and it just allows you to give you more information about where you should go next and how you can change your outcomes.
Yeah, so if something goes wrong, like you don't beat yourself up. You're like, oh, like you don't make it
Yeah,
like, oh, I am a failure or I
yeah,
suck. Like you try to kind of analyze, okay, what went wrong? Why did that situation go wrong? What can I do to improve? Is
yeah.
that right?
Yeah, that's what I try to do. Usually at first when if you're like your emotions take over and you kind of feel like you're an epic failure, you can let yourself feel that for a little bit, but don't let it go more than a day. And then after that, figure out like there are plenty of it was a lot of our professors also talk about it like they failed miserably in their careers at times, and that's just expected. That's expected in life, I think.
Yeah,
And in your
yeah.
profession. And I think it's just important to learn to deal with the rejection and deal with the failures and just know that it's like how just keep going and eventually something will work in your favor and you'll get more and more data points to figure out what direction you should be going.
Yeah.
And yeah, every failure is like just new information.
Yeah, and I love what you said, like you have a very human approach, like a practical human approach. You said like, okay, you're gonna feel the emotions, you're gonna feel like you suck, and that's fine. They're gonna come up. You can be aware of them, you can even feel them, but you can't dwell on them for too long. I like that because it sounds like a really nice happy medium between a very robotic approach, which is like, no, just get up like immediately and do like 50 push-ups, and the other like too human approach where it's like, yeah, it's okay if you spend a few weeks like, I don't know, crying about
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah,
you're
rotting in the emotions.
yeah, like you're saying, it's like obviously it's gonna suck, it's not gonna feel good. You can feel it, you can, I don't know, spend some time experiencing that, but then you have to quickly bounce back and say, okay, what went wrong? What can I practically do to improve that situation? Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And would you say that's kind of like a soft skill that's important to learn in a way?
Yeah, it definitely is one of those soft skills you should learn because even in your job, you're going to get negative feedback. It's just going to happen. And being able to understand and kind of separate or at least acknowledge the fact that you have this emotional response,
Yeah.
but the emotional response isn't always the most logical because it's important to get that constructive and even sometimes constructive feedback can feel very negative. But it's important to try and separate those two and you can deal with the human side. And I think most people at first, you're going to be a little offended or sad that things didn't go your way.
100%.
But later
Yeah.
on, you're going to be so grateful for it because likely they pointed you more in the right direction, right? Like they were giving you feedback on something you were maybe sucking at. And it sucks to hear that. But now you know that you suck at it and you can work on it. And then maybe you'll become the best at it. Like I've heard that from a lot of people because it's kind of like the do it for the plot. I don't know if you've heard that. It's like
Yeah.
it's like you might have had this failure, but it's going to be so epic when you come back and you are now
Yeah, yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
that same subject. And I've heard that from people who become TAs. So at first they failed miserably, like they failed their exams in first year, say first year chemistry, and then now they're the TAs for chemistry and are like experts in that area. And so sometimes it can be a great motivator that failure, to
Yeah.
try harder and to prove yourself, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard countless stories. I mean, like there's a lot of epic stories out there of, I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of the typical one where like you
yeah,
start out and like things go wrong and then you
yeah,
go and you're like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna have that be my story. And you go like train or whatnot. The equivalent of train in engineering is probably you spend endless hours doing like problem sets at the library
yes.
and like trying to design things. But I want to talk more about the soft skills. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the technical skills you had to learn, some of the stuff you used in your project, some of the things that you think you'll be using in your job. Like, can you talk to me about some of the technical skills you would recommend someone to learn if they wanted to go get a job, for example, in mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so definitely some sort of 3D modeling software, particularly SolidWorks, at least for Canada. I know SolidWorks is like the number one that's being used. So getting really proficient in that and how to do analysis and how to design quickly. From my school, we start learning it from year one, and I know some other schools don't learn it until third year. So I think it's really important to develop that skill because there's a good chance in your job you'll have to be doing it. And there is many mechanical engineering jobs that are fully doing CAD for most of the time. So I think that's important. Next is probably finite element analysis.
Okay. And
That
can you
one
explain
is
can you explain what that is?
okay. The thing is I haven't taken this course.
Okay.
I took so in my school you can take computational fluid dynamics or finite element analysis, and apparently they're relatively similar enough in approach. But I've seen so many job applications that require
Finite
finite
element
element analysis.
analysis.
So
Okay.
basically, I think it's that you create like a matrix and you have all these different nodes within a material, and you're looking at the stresses within the material. Where for computational fluid dynamics, it's basically the same thing, but we would wrap sort of a mesh around some sort of object, so like an
Yeah.
airfoil for an airplane wing, and then we would do analysis on those components, like the air flowing over it or the heat transfer within an
Oh,
object.
cool.
So I think it's basically within like stress and strain
Sure.
rather than I could be a little bit wrong on that though because
Yeah,
I haven't
that's
taken the
it's,
course.
it sounds like it's like a simulation skill of some
Yeah,
sort.
yeah,
Like you're
an
using
analysis
like some
method. Yeah,
type of numerical method, some type of probably using differential equations or something, the
yeah,
software equivalent of that, to do like some type of, I don't know, simulation of either heat or like structural
yeah,
changes
yes,
to a, okay, like okay. So I'm guessing like if you're, I don't know, building a bridge or if you're building a plane or if you're building any mechanical object and you want to see how it's performing in a certain environment, like that's probably the go-to skill for something like that, right?
yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in like aerospace focused or even like HVAC heat transfer, that's where CFD is going to come in. And that's kind of where I ended up focusing, which is why I took that course instead of finite element analysis. But the reason I say that is because I have heard it from employers, and
Yeah.
I also have heard like people going into those jobs that require that and they didn't take it in university and they just have to learn it on this, which is doable. Like you know how to teach yourself at that point. You've been in engineering, so you know how to teach yourself, but
Yeah.
it's
Like
ideal if you can learn it before.
do you need to know every technical skill before you start a job, or do you think no,
No.
you will learn it on the job?
No, I don't think you do. I do know they do technical interviews and they will ask you some questions, particularly if you've done an internship with them before or you have experience in that area. They're definitely going to ask you those questions. But pretty commonly, when I've gone to like industry nights and talking with people in industry, they typically always are looking, yeah, they're always looking for someone who's a good fit for their team. And all the technical skills, they are like, we can teach you. We will teach you because we do
Yeah,
everything our way. And sometimes companies actually kind of like that you haven't been taught because they can teach you to do it exactly the way they like. So it
sure,
depends on
sure.
the company on
So
how they do their training.
you don't come with bad habits.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I read a quote a while back is that you spend a lot more time unlearning things rather than like learning new things. So like
Yeah.
that's probably and that's really good you mentioned that because a lot of students have the perception of, oh, I don't have any skills, I don't have any experience, I don't have like equals bad, like I'm at the bottom of the pile. But you're saying no, that can be a strength if you like showcase it the right way.
It can be. I would say though, it might be that you don't have the technical skills, but ideally you've done other things that can
Sure.
advocate for, you being a self-learner, being able to adapt, all those kind of skills. I still wouldn't recommend like not doing anything outside of your classes. So if say you don't do the technical internships, but you're
Mm-hmm.
really involved with clubs or you're really involved with some sort
Yeah.
of organization or you volunteer, like they're kind of looking for something like that, another experience you can talk about to kind of showcase that you can learn and that you're, yeah, adaptable and that you would be a great fit on their team, even though you don't have the actual technical skills, but that can all be learned. Soft skills are really
Yeah.
hard to be taught. So that's something that they really look for because it's interesting on how do you teach someone to communicate better? You can give them all this knowledge
Yeah.
and it's somewhat of an art.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I love what you said about like projects and clubs because usually it goes like I have no experience. Why am I not getting an internship? There's this really nice spectrum in between of like undergraduate research, clubs,
Mhm.
projects. Like literally you could, I don't know, like build a computer program on your own at your own home. Like you just gotta have something that you can talk about to try to get that first internship. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, yeah. One thing I always tell my friends, like if they're struggling and getting a engineering job for the summer, I'm like, why don't you just pick up a personal project? Because that shows technical skills. If anything, it's kind of more interesting probably to an employer because it was all self-driven and it shows that you're a self-learner. You're yeah, able to adapt. Again, I think they're really looking for people that they don't have to be told what to do absolutely every second of the day at their job. Like people who can kind of like even when I've been kind of like a manager of people. It's really awesome when you see someone come to you and they say, "Hey, we have this problem, and here's the list of solutions I suggest. I think we should go this way," rather than going, manager, I have a problem," and then
Yeah.
it's like it's up to me to solve it. Like that's the difference in like being a self learner and understanding how to problem solve, which is something you learn your whole engineering degree too.
Yeah, like you want to be an asset, not a liability, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then how do you balance that with like being the complete opposite of that spectrum where you're saying, "Oh, I don't want to burn anyone. I don't want to ask any questions in my internship or in my job." Like how would you find the balance between being an asset and not someone who's just like asking a question every 5 minutes while
Mhm.
still knowing when to ask like an important question and you're genuinely stuck and you feel like you need help?
Yeah, what I would do in my previous internships is I would either have like a blocked out set of time with my manager to go over all the questions that I've had, or if there's times of day that you know that they're typically not busy, I what I do is like I would have problems when I got to a point where I really needed to ask them a question, but they're in a call or I can tell they're very busy right now and it's not a pressing matter. I would just write it down and then when they have a moment, then I go up to them. But identifying when it's an important question, I think um, if you make the wrong decision and the repercussions require you to do a lot more work, or all the work you're doing is going to have to be changed if you didn't ask that question, I think that's a really important time to go and ask a
Yeah.
question because you're just going to waste time basically, and you're gonna look worse for not having asked because they're gonna question you like, why did you not ask me?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is like it's not that you'll only look bad. It's not that you look bad if you ask too many questions. You'll actually look bad if you ask none at all, right? Because then you're kind of not
Yeah,
engaged.
Yeah, yeah, and they expect you to ask questions. Like, they want someone who's actively, wanting to work and learn and build connections within the company.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think you don't want to be burdensome asking too many questions. And that's again where you come to the soft skills. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. How do you
And
make these kind of decisions, right?
yeah, yeah, and I think joining clubs, that's a really low there's low repercussions, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can go and test that out, and you can also genuinely like be part of that club and then ask for feedback, and you might get that feedback that you're asking too many questions. Or they won't necessarily say it like that, but they'll give you the feedback before you get to the job where things are a little bit higher stakes. So that's why I think also like joining clubs where it's student run, it's a lot lower stakes, and
Yeah,
you can make the
it's
mistakes there as opposed to like embarrassingly when you're in front of a bunch of like really skilled, smart engineers.
100%. And it's a good testing ground for just like seeing how you behave naturally. Because I remember when I would join clubs, because it was student ran. Like, and even though a lot of these students were very smart and talented and had way better resumes than I did at the time, it was still students. So I would go and say like I would be a lot less concerned with how I look and how smart and how competent I'm perceived, and a lot more with like genuinely just asking questions and trying to learn. And I do agree with you. The calibration process there is way more efficient because, like in a club, you get to ask a lot more stupid questions in a shorter period of time, and you get feedback from other students. And it's not going to be always like verbal feedback, like, "Hey, that's a stupid question." But sometimes even in someone's response or body language, you're like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't ask that," or like, I
Yeah.
agree with you. So it sounds like you kind of perceived clubs and projects and stuff with other students almost as kind of like training grounds for how you not only building your technical skill sets, but also building your soft skills.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of skills even like in the workplace, or like navigating difficult conversations. Like I was in student government for a bit, so like
Yeah.
seeing the discussions that go on and how people navigate when they disagree in conversation. And for a while, like I barely said anything in the meetings. I just sit there and listen. But being around that environment, seeing how they deal with it, see the language they use, and even like things like Robert's rules, like how do they officially go about doing that? I would have never even known that those existed or how to deal with that. It's just like getting in the room with those people and listening. And again, like them being students, they're ahead of you or they have more experience in
Yeah.
some other area, but they're not crazy ahead like a professor or maybe your manager is who's like 40 years ahead in training from you. They're 2 to 3 years ahead. So there's a lot more relatability, and they also know the skills that they recently learned and how they kind of navigated it, where somebody who's been in the field for 40 years, they kind of forget that that's a skill you had to learn because they've just been doing it for so long.
Yeah, it sounds like the ultimate soft skill you're describing is just like how do you navigate situations and how do you make decisions, right? Like that's really what it
Yeah.
boils down to. So is there is it like again, sounds like a lot of that just comes from experience. Like you're describing, you go do that in clubs, you go do that in projects, and you get feedback, and then you say, "Oh, I should do that," and then you go do that in an internship, and then you go do that in another internship. Suppose you don't have access, like suppose, I don't know, you're doing everything online, or like let's say you're in a school where for whatever reason there's no clubs, there's nothing of that nature. Like, do you have any advice for someone who wants to learn these soft skills but may not have that direct access to like, I don't know, clubs, internships, in-person experiences?
Yeah, I would first check what your community has because there's a good chance that there is things going on in the community that you can be part of, whether that's maybe STEM outreach programs for kids
Yeah.
or there might be other universities that don't require you to be a student to be involved with different clubs if in your area. Or you could even connect with online groups. There's a lot of online spaces now for connecting with STEM and being part of organizations that are completely run through Zoom. So I don't think that like now post COVID that your geographic location really limits you from being those aspects. Like many of mine, I was the vice president student life and throwing parties for my school while this was during COVID, full online year. So we ran social events online. So there's definitely like tons of possibilities now that everyone's very used to being online. And I think a lot of organizations typically meet online through Teams or Zoom now, just because it's easier.
Yeah, it's a lot
So
more convenient for sure.
yeah. Yeah, so I think just looking and seeing what's out there and doing research on what's in your local area and maybe figuring out if there's like a niche that you're specifically interested in getting involved with. Like, is it outreach, teaching people about STEM, or is it a technical skill specifically, like maybe there's a project you can be part of, particularly if it's maybe like coding based. There's competitions. It's a really fun one.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
join other competitions that go on that are engineering related. And I think some of them require entry fees, but you can also reach out to your school because it's possible your school will cover entry fees, especially if they don't offer very much.
Yeah. Well, you know what I love about your answers, the theme that keeps repeating over and over is you just gotta try something. You just gotta do
Yeah, you
something.
have to do
Yeah.
something.
Like I love that because I really think if it boils down, since we're talking about soft skills, if it really boils down to one skill is just to say, okay, the circumstances are non-ideal. This door is closed. This door is closed. This window is shut. What else can I try? And you just have to keep like it sounds like you've had to do a bit of that yourself, even though it sounds like you've had to do some jobs or some things not related to engineering, like that social
Mhm.
media desk job that you were describing.
Yeah.
That probably still taught you something, right?
Oh yeah, and it was partly social media desk job and partly event. So it was event planning, but I typically would just go to the event days. And for example, I ended up getting to run an event for the CF Snowbirds, which are the like air acrobatics for Canada. And so I got to ride in all the military trucks and like direct them into where they were parking their communications like truck. And so there's random things I would have never thought that that would have been associated with my job. And I ended up getting to like go into the planes and meet all of these like high level pilots. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, and event planning is one of those things I never thought would have been useful for engineering and is incredibly useful. The amount of decisions you have to make, especially on the fly and with very limited resources or information, because when you're at an event and there's thousands of people there and something is going wrong, that's a crucial part of the event. How do you deal with that?
Yeah,
How do you do that
yeah.
quickly and efficiently? And so I found that really, really helpful. And another area you would never think would be related to engineering. Um, Event planning is tough, honestly. It's one of those things that very high
Like
stress.
too many variables changing very
Yes,
fast, right?
yeah, high variables, and then you've got clients involved too, which
Hmm.
obviously, and just think about this in relation to, say, you're doing project management for construction. What happens when things get delayed? What happens when that you say an order that you needed is now delayed 2 months? How are you going to deliver that news to the client? Like all of those skills I learned being in events because oh no, we needed this delivered and it didn't come in time. How do I tell the client that we're not going to have this? And how can
Yeah.
I propose it in a way that we have solutions of ways to move forward? That's skills that yeah I I can apply to engineering but weren't engineering related at all.
Yeah, and like it sounds like you don't need specifically technical skills to cultivate, or you don't need technical experiences to cultivate those soft skills that we're describing, right? Sounds like that's
Mhm.
just kind of like being in situations and learning how to deal with it, and then reflecting on how you dealt with it, and like so, what I'm trying to say is it sounds like the soft skills aspect, really, there's just no other way than throwing yourself in some situations, seeing how you behave and improving as you go by, even if they're not technical experiences at all. They don't have to be like engineering projects, they don't have to be clubs. Like, would you say that's the case?
Yeah, yeah. I would always say to everybody, as soon as you can, starting to get involved outside of your academics is really important. And there's a lot of learning that goes on. My professor once, she was saying a lot of the time people don't realize when they're doing the most learning, they actually feel like they're doing the least because it's so natural and there's such a natural flow of things that they don't realize that they're learning. Where sometimes in like an internship, you feel like you're stuck at a desk, you have this list of things to do, you feel like you're being very productive, but if you're sitting in front of a desk all day, you might not actually be learning as much as if you were part of maybe a student organization where you have a lot more say in what's going on and creative control over things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely don't think that you have to be in a super technical role, and basically any experience, any organization, any part-time job can really help develop those soft
Yeah,
skills.
do something.
Yeah, especially if it's customer service. I think everybody should try at least one customer service job
Yeah.
in your life. I think that
You've
really,
had
really
have you had a
helps.
customer service job?
Oh yeah, I've had quite a few. I was a busser at a restaurant for 4 years, so I was
Okay.
bussing tables and food to
Oh, cool.
tables.
Have you dealt with any
Um,
Karens?
oh yeah, yes, yeah. People would come in off their boats, and they're very entitled. They'd love to, and their children were even worse, because they
Oh
love to put
God.
their children separate from them because they wanted to have a good time without the kids. So then you become
Okay.
part babysitter as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, definitely lots of Karens.
yeah. Okay. And
Which
what did that teach you?
Um, how to stay calm in difficult
How to
situations.
stay calm around Karens.
Yeah, how to stay calm around there. Well, because sometimes they're not even their complaints aren't even necessarily logical. And that's one thing is how do you deal when because and that could totally happen with a client in your engineering job. They're
Yeah.
coming to you with these complaints and you have all these logical reasons of why what happened and that you had no control over it or whatever. Or even you're doing everything by the books and they want it this way and you're like, that is not going to work. How do you navigate that conversation and steer them in the right way without offending them or triggering them to get worse and worse or more angry?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that so see, there's another skill like being a busser. I was a busser since I was 14, so it's like learning those skills from a young age, I think is really helpful too. And that's something if someone's a high school student and they want to start developing soft skills, just get like a part-time customer service job.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. And again, I think part of why you have such good soft skills is you've done all these things before even engineering or during engineering that were not engineering related at all, that
Mm-hmm.
forced you to deal with people, forced you to learn how to think on your feet and solve problems, how like what to do when situations arise. And for me, it's very similar because one of my first jobs, I was a cashier at Kmart, which is a supermarket that
Oh, nice.
closed, and if it closed down like nationwide.
Oh,
And if that doesn't tell you something about it, like then,
yeah.
like it was just a tough environment. Like the customers were just very tough all the time. And in that single job, I had to learn how to like cool my temper and to not
Mm-hmm.
always just like say, hey, like what are you saying? What are you talking about? And just kind of learn how to absorb that and learn how to like control your emotions. And that definitely served me very well because in engineering school, I've had many situations where a professor would do something or a student would do something and the my impulse or natural tendency would be to lash out and say, "Oh my God, what?" Like, and just kind of start being an emotional mess. But then, thanks to that customer service job from high school, I learned how to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important that you mentioned that because a lot of your engineering skill set is built outside of engineering school, is built outside of engineering project. It's again those soft skills, communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to talk also. You have a TikTok page, right?
Yes,
And you recently
I
have
do.
Instagram and YouTube. Not. Do you have a YouTube channel
Not
yet?
YouTube yet, and my Instagram I'm just starting to kick off. I will be posting a lot more at the end of April just because I'm focused on graduating for now. A little bit important.
Sure, sure. But
But
your main channel is the TikTok one.
yes, TikTok's my main channel, and for now, yeah, the Instagram is just some reposts from that channel.
Sure.
But yeah, I
Okay.
do plan to expand onto the to Instagram as well. Same mechanical engineering themed content, and now I guess it'll be transitioning into like what do you do the career transition from being going from undergrad into being in the workforce, and
Yeah,
like
it's
how does that
cool.
look?
Yeah, you get to
Yeah,
like document your first job and what it's like to work as
yeah,
a mechanical engineer.
and that was kind of part of my motivation too. I just knew I had a lot of really cool things scheduled for this year, and I was kind of wanting to document it for myself and also maybe share the journey and connect with other people that are going through it.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
is that why you made your TikTok page? Because you felt like I have so much cool stuff I want to share with people. Like let me share it with people.
yeah, and I've been doing it. I work for the school doing engineering stories channel, which is another TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And I've been just showcasing the undergraduate experience within engineering and connecting with a lot of prospective students. And it just made me realize that there is a lot of, first of all, like misconceptions, also like maybe lack of representation of what it really is to be in engineering. Like for example, we were talking about how I thought you needed to be a genius to go into engineering, and that's not true. So I think also just debunking a lot of that and giving people somebody they can reach out to who's been through it and can talk about their experience, any questions they have. Because I know it can be kind of confusing coming from high school into engineering. You don't know exactly what to expect. So that was also one of my motivators is I love to help people if I can, and I love making
Yeah.
videos. So I feel like it's a great way to reach out to people, specifically like high school students that aren't sure about what direction they want to go with their
Yeah.
life.
So yeah, do you like you feel useful doing it?
Yeah, it gives me some purpose.
Yeah. Cool. And that's very important because sometimes people think that um like helping people or like giving or sharing is this like 100% altruistic thing, which I mean it is very altruistic and it is very kind of you to do that, but you also gain personal satisfaction out of it, right? And you feel like it
Mhm.
makes you feel important. I think I feel that way as well, and I think that's very important for anyone to hear this because um if you can find like a way that combines what you like feeling and what other people want, I think then you win big time because then everybody wins, right? Like
Yeah, it's a win-win.
exactly, if you like being helpful and you like being useful and you like sharing and help things and helping other people, and there's all these people who want to be helped and need things shared with them, like then by all means, I'm happy that people like you start a TikTok page or start sharing their experience of doing something because it's just the most efficient thing, you know?
Yeah. And I'm incredibly grateful that people actually like watching my videos. It's pretty crazy to make a video that you're like, yeah, that like you have a fun time making it and you think it's pretty cool, but you put it out there and you have no clue if people are gonna like it or not. And it's very like it's such a cool and kind of surreal experience when so many people agree with what you had to say. So it's also like a thing, a relatability thing. Like I can put out something about failing exams or having a tough time in a course and then seeing everybody else agree. I think it helps you to know you're not alone. And also I think the comment section also helps other people kind of realize that there's such a big community of people going through the exact
Yeah.
same thing at the same time. That's another thing I love about TikTok is just like the connection between people about all your different struggles. I feel like everyone realized, I don't know if you heard of it, is like nobody has a like an individual experience. It's like someone has been through the same thing as you.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the most freeing feelings in the world, right?
Mhm.
Like to feel like, oh, I'm not the only one dealing with this. Other
Yeah,
people struggle with this too.
and I think engineering is a big one for that, like the imposter syndrome people have in first year.
Yeah.
I thought everybody was way smarter than me in first year. I was like, oh gosh, like all these people know so much more about me. I was not computer savvy at all either. And like even downloading the programs at first was really challenging for me. And I'm like, oh, what have I got myself into? But then you start to realize and talk to more people. And that's again where the clubs come in. You're talking to people, you realize everyone has the same experience. Everyone feels the imposter syndrome. Everyone's
Yeah.
had failures and feels like they're maybe not smart enough or not good enough. And then you realize, okay, so, this is a normal thing to experience. And I always tell first years that it is normal to get a bad grade. It is normal to not feel like you're smart enough. And like that's okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're able like by finding the right people, like that just make it like I think also a recurring theme in a lot of the things you're saying is you just got to go find other
Yeah.
people to work with, other people to build things with, other people to struggle with, other people in a comment section to relate to. Like it sounds like
Yes.
having that kind of support, even if it's not in person, but like it sounds like that makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did a video once of like the things that help you the most to succeed in your engineering degree. And in the comment section, one of them was building community and relying on your friends. And everyone in the comment section is like, that's what got me through my degree was having a good set of friends, a good study group. Because engineering isn't meant to be done alone. You'll never be
Yeah.
in the field designing a rocket by yourself. That just doesn't happen. You're going to be with a team of people. So yeah, getting into the kind of that groove starting in undergrad, I think is really important and will help you be a lot less stressed because it's easier when you work together because everybody has a different skill set. And if you study together or work on a project together, you just get things done more efficiently because somebody will be good at the thing you're bad at and you'll be good at the thing that they're bad at.
Yeah, see, sometimes I hear from a lot of students, someone will say, "Oh, but I'm an introvert. Oh, but I don't like people." Like what are your thoughts if someone has a tendency where they're people averse,
Mhm.
generally, but you practically speaking, you do need people, you do need a community, you do need like what would be an advice you have for someone in that situation?
I would say if you're an introvert, you do not have a shortage of those in engineering. There's definitely lots of introverts. So just find other people like you. You'll probably be able to figure out who you mesh with well. And I
Mm-hmm.
think those people tend to communicate rather on like a Discord call or on messaging. So there's other ways to communicate that isn't like going and sitting together and being with people all the time. So just finding what works best for you and finding people that are like you. Because I definitely have had like experiences where at first I think it was challenging. Like I found people that I did not really mesh with the best.
Mm-hmm.
And like by my final year, like I have a tight group of like awesome people. Every one of them are just like so amazing. And I think that just happens throughout your degree. First year to everybody, it's like the roughest year because there's so much transition, including finding your people, the level up from high school to university. So I think it's a challenging year for everybody. But yeah, like keeping that in mind that even if you haven't found your people right away, they're out there and they're in your program, but you might just not have encountered them yet. So maybe join a club. Maybe
Yeah.
you will find them.
Wow, okay, smooth. I like that. That's very, very good advice. I would take that advice as well. And again, I joined countless clubs, projects, extracurriculars, part-time jobs, and like you, I think those are the things that made all the difference when it came to
Mhm.
applying for things or to finding people. I do want to talk also a bit about kind of your interest in entrepreneurship in general, or it sounds you said something at the beginning of this call you said, "Oh, I later realized I'm also interested in business."
Mhm.
How do you combine that entrepreneurial interest with your engineering? Is that something you're able to find through your job? Is that something you hope to achieve through, for example, your TikTok page or your social media presence? Like, talk to me a bit about your engineering entrepreneurship interface.
Yeah, so where it first started was actually being the vice president student life on the engineering society, because when you come into these roles, especially if you're like a vice president role, a lot of the time you have a lot of creative control over what you do. And it was kind of the first time that I had a budget and I had control over what got done. Of course, it had to be approved by the whole council, but
Hmm.
you're like the kind of the creative director in what you do with that money and how you think it's going to benefit students, and what's going to be a hit, what isn't going to be. And so that was kind of my first experience where it was kind of like I was the one making the decisions and getting to see what happens. And it related to business a lot because we obviously had to manage a budget and we were dealing with what is the student body going to like, what's going to be successful, and how can we optimize this so that it gives the most benefit to the students. So that's where it kind of stemmed from, of like where I started to be like, okay, I kind of like this business thing. And then the next one was the Western Engineering Competition, where I had to do a lot of business, like a lot of calls with various sponsors, lots of engineering companies, the city of Kelowna. And I got to kind of realize that I really enjoy the human interaction. And I think business has a lot of that. You're dealing with like relationships between people, and I really enjoyed that. And I love the connection between engineering. I think, like we've been talking,
Yeah,
people and engineering are so interconnected. And I always am very focused, as I've gone through my degree, like very focused on the end user, rather than the initial
yeah,
development. And I love big ideas. So I'm either the generator of ideas or I love the end user because I like seeing the impact it has on people's lives and getting to share
sure.
with so many different people in different like applications. And so I like the people focus and the big picture. And I think that's where business and engineering kind of come together, because
Yeah,
obviously engineering is how we execute those big ideas, but the big ideas, well, I guess business is how we can make sure there's a market to fulfill
sure.
those big ideas. And then engineering is like the avenue and the tools we use to create that solution.
Yeah. So engineering is building the thing, and business is making sure people want the thing that you built, right?
Yeah, yeah, and creating longevity. Yeah.
Yeah. And when did you learn? When did you re have the awareness of like, oh, I like end user experiences. I like how like the business side of like when did you realize that?
Yeah, probably in design projects, especially the ones that were more open-ended. Even in my first year, we did design projects. One of them was like to benefit the student life of students on campus.
Sure.
And I really always end up focusing that I'm focusing on like, okay, what is going to be the best experience for the user? How can we provide the most benefit to them? And like always keeping them front of mind whenever I was designing. And it was more of like, I didn't realize other people don't necessarily go into design with that frame of mind until
Yeah.
like it's just like repetitive design project after design project. I realize I always am gravitating that direction. And I actually am in a course called Inclusive Design, which is completely focused on end users, specifically those with different abilities or like they're wheelchair users or whatever. And so they need a specific custom design for them. And I found that I really enjoy that because it's really fun getting to work with somebody who's non-technical and being the
Mm-hmm.
technical advisor. And I guess that also comes back to why I love my TikTok channel, is I get to educate people. And same thing with end user and business. I feel like you're educating, talking with a lot of different expertise. So like in business, you're often having to translate engineering knowledge and terms to a financial team. And I
Yeah.
just love like the art of trying to figure out how to do that in the best way that you're speaking their language, and kind of the constant changing and having to read who the person is, understand their role, understand their knowledge, and then transfer everything that you do in a way they can understand.
Yeah. How to do that in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I love analogies too. Like probably throughout this whole thing, I've like been saying engineering analogies,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like the failures of your design and how the failures in life, and it's the same thing. It's iterative process.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really apply a lot of, and that's how I memorize a lot of stuff in engineering. It's like, how can I take an engineering concept, apply that into my regular life, in an example, and that's how I remember a lot of concepts. So I think that also shows my very people focused,
Yeah, but
kind of.
that's very I mean, that sounds like a soft skill worth developing is you learn something and you go test it out in other areas because that gives you an
Mhm.
understanding of the thing itself, right? You're like, why does that work here but not work here, right?
And that's where event planning, honestly, it's just a lot of trial and error, so many different moving parts and people, and testing what works, seeing what doesn't, identifying why it did, why it didn't. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of that applied to engineering as well.
Yeah, and again, you like from the event planning, and you were ta said how it was through a design project that you're like, oh, why am I gravitating more towards the idea rather than like
Mhm.
it sounds like whenever you've had an aha moment, it was always while you were like doing something or involved in
Yes.
something. So again, that really just drills the idea of like if you haven't figured out what you're doing, there's a good chance you just haven't tried enough things, right? Or you haven't been in a design meeting, or you haven't been into an event planning situation where you're panicking and you have to like figure out what you're doing. Like it sounds like again the theme is just try more stuff and accept that you don't know yet, and you will
Mhm.
eventually figure it out through trying more stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think some people also, I notice, are hesitant to try something because they're like, oh, what if something better comes along? Or what if this isn't the perfect fit for me? Well, if you do the thing and it's not a perfect fit, you've learned what you don't like we talked about the desk job. So it's equally as
Yeah.
important to figure out what you don't like as what you do like. So you don't have to be so worried about if that's an absolute perfect fit, particularly for co-ops, because you're going to like certain aspects and not like it. And then again, that's going to help you get more information to make the next decision of like where should I go from this case? Something that avoids the desk work but has more of this specific type of design work or CAD work that I really liked. So I think yeah, that's a really important part as well. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be all the things you love. It's what also do you not like.
Yeah, it's probably better to figure out things you don't like first, right? Because
Yeah,
you may do something that you can tolerate, but like you don't want to do something you hate, right?
yeah. Then that's an automatic X off the list of jobs you're gonna apply to.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
has that
yeah.
incorporated.
I
Yeah.
I agree with that. So yeah, so try out a bunch of stuff for the intention of I don't have to find the thing I love right away, but through trying a bunch of more stuff, I'm gonna get more experience and calibrate and filter out enough things that it'll boil down to like a few things that in your case like the user experience design, the business aspect, the technical skills that you mentioned. Yeah, I think that is probably the most solid way of going about engineering school, in my opinion. I would say that that's probably what works best, especially again if you're not like this is also so relevant because I'm very similar to you in that when I joined engineering school, I was not one of those like genius prodigy engineering kids, you know? Like I was when I was in high school, I was a lot more interested in the arts. I was doing writing and filming and I would not show up to my physics classes, and the problem sets and homework assignments were way too long. Even though I loved science as a concept, I hated the way it was taught in school. So when I
Mhm.
showed up to undergrad, I was destroyed by my first calc exam, by my first physics exam, and it took me
Me
a
too.
while, but it was through getting destroyed and over and then the thing that really helped me was joining actually a club. It was a small group of undergraduate students building CubeSat and launching it into space. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. These people are undergrads and they're about to launch
Yeah.
something into space. I want to be part of that. And I would go in and I would ask very stupid questions and I would like, but then after 3 months, 4 months of being there, not only did I absorb the things people were saying and I became more technically competent, like you were saying, I basically was like, oh yeah, I don't really care about power systems that much. Oh yeah, that battery, like we need to recharge it, and yeah, we'll use the solar panels. I don't know if I care about that much. Ooh, antennas. Antennas are really cool. Let me look at antennas. And then it was only through doing that that I not only figured out what it is that I don't like and what I do like, but in the process built the belief and the self-image of, oh, I'm not that stupid. Like I can actually understand things and I can actually learn things. And you start
Mhm.
building evidence. And none of that would have happened had I not joined that club or had I not
Yeah,
joined worked
exactly.
on that project, you know.
And you never thought it would have put you that direction when you signed up.
I would have never thought it would have like shaped my because that was a CubeSat project that I worked on, which led me to a first space internship, which then led me to my first NASA internship, which led me to my second NASA internship, which led me to a PhD on space systems, and now I get to work at NASA full time. None of that. If you were to go back to sophomore year Ali and say you're gonna get a PhD and you work at NASA, I would have been like, there's just no way.
No way.
And had I not, and that's because not only were my skills at a low level, like non-existent, my belief and my self-belief, I had no evidence that I could do anything. But it was through
Mhm.
joining that club, it was through working on that project, it was through dealing with these students and learning, and little by little you say, oh, I'm not that stupid. Oh, I can actually solve this problem. Oh, I just figured this thing out and people praise me for it. Huh, that means I know a thing or two. And you're like, oh, actually, and then on the technical end, you're like, oh, you know what? I solved that problem, but that thing is boring. I'm not curious about it. Oh, what's that thing I'm curious about? So I agree with you wholeheartedly in that, in my personal experience, 99% of my success in engineering did not have to do with classes, did not have to do with theoretical stuff. It had to do with like showing up to projects or showing up to a group of people and being very open to saying, hey, I'm the least useful person here right now. I'm willing to work very hard. Like, I want to learn. Let me try something. Give me a project. Give me something. And a lot of students get triggered, unfortunately, when I say this, but very, very often you have to volunteer in the beginning.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this is something I like really pains me. I see a large number of students telling me, oh, if I'm not making $50 per hour, I'm not doing the internship. Or if I'm not doing that thing, like there's this kind of sense of, oh, I'm not gonna do free work. But I really don't think it's free work. I think if you're working with a professor or if you're working in a very valuable environment, you're the one who's really winning because the skills you're gaining and everything that you're cultivating is going to help you make way more later on in life than whatever, I don't know, $20 per hour that you're asking for. Assuming obviously your finances are taken care of, you're not starving, you're not having like
Yeah.
strong financial difficulties. Like in my case, I took out student loans and that gave me the luxury of like, okay, I don't have to go work a full-time job just to pay for engineering school. I'm just going to take out the loan and I'm going to figure it out later. But I think that unfortunate truth, and I'm curious, I don't know what your experience was, is if you're starting out with like no skills, like it's kind of tough to expect I'm going to get paid a lot to go join a club or do an internship when I still haven't cultivated those skills.
Yeah, I think you pretty much always start off doing some sort of volunteer position, but the key is pick something you're interested in, and they're fun. Like, and people always talk about how there's no social life for engineering students, but if you join a club, you will instantly have a group of people that you'll have fun with. You'll do all this technical learning, volunteer work, but you're also socializing. So it's not like it doesn't feel really like doing work, I found, because you're
Yeah.
having a lot of fun with other students. But yeah, it can be challenging. People do, I've heard that before, that they're only going to do a job that pays a certain amount. I think it's important to look at what skills you have, what
Yeah.
skills you're hoping to learn, and what's going to lead you to. I think everyone's end goalpost is kind of always shifting of what they ultimately want to do with their career. But if you have a direction, even maybe talk to like professors or upper year students on like what skills you need to get into that area, and then look for the opportunities that develop that skill, because it might not be paid, but it's like the value of that. You're like, hey, I'm going to do this, but I'm developing that skill, and now I can move closer to the goalpost of where I am going to get paid. And I started out personally volunteering a lot, and then it became to a point where I felt like I had developed my skill set so like sufficiently in that area that I felt like now
Yeah.
I deserve to be paid. And then I started looking for specifically the paid roles. And then of course I ended up getting them because I had far more experience because of those volunteer positions. And I found it's been quite an exponential increase in opportunities and things you get and pay increases as well. So you start off kind of flat with the volunteer activities, and then it quickly starts to spike up because all that has been adding onto your resume and your experiences and how much you're worth to a
Hmm.
company. And it does pay off in the long run. I can say for me, it's definitely paid off.
Yeah.
And even for jobs, through those volunteer things, I work with the faculty, and I ended up getting word of mouth jobs. So I didn't even apply. I was just the first recommended student
Oh,
when
cool.
companies reached out. And so like and I never would have thought that. Like that I didn't
Yeah.
sign up going into it that expecting to get that job because of it, or get even a job at all because of it. So sometimes you're signing up as a volunteer, and in the end, you end up getting a job because of it, which is paid and paid well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then again, like you only got offered that because you had built the skill set and you became sufficiently like useful in
yeah,
that domain that someone was like, "Hey, I need this. This person has the skills. Like
yeah.
here's pay."
And the connections between people, that is very, very common. I've heard most people that I know that got jobs already were through internships they had previously or
Yeah.
through connections like family connections or friends, which is a bit of not always
Yeah,
doesn't always
people
feel fair when
it
it's
does
that way, but
yeah,
you
but
can
it's
build them yourself.
that's kind of another thing. Like there's when I was I don't know, freshman in college, I used to like hate when I would hear like someone got an internship through a family connection, and I'm like, oh, that's just so unfair, and it would kind of be very discouraging. But I think at some point you have to accept the practicality of the situation and just like that's life. Like what are you gonna do? Like you just have to be better, or like you just have to go build your own connection, like you said, you know?
Yeah, and identify like, so if you look at it in the aspect of like, oh, they just have it so easy, or you can look and say, hey, the reason they got that was through a connection. How can I build those connections so I can get to that same place that I ended up having a connection to somebody who had a connection to a company who got me the job. So really in the end, it was both of us got the same job through connection, but one, it was kind of, you know, maybe given to them or that they automatically were in that position. And one, you just had to put yourself in the position to make those connections. So you have control. I think it's the like like the external locus of control or internal.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Internal locus?
I have no idea.
Well, the internal locus of control is like
Yeah.
is everyone else the situation I'm in controlling my destiny kind of,
Oh,
or
I
is it
see.
my choices that are going to control my destiny?
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think
yeah.
that switching that mindset is really helpful, and it also I think gets rid of some of that jealousy, and also yeah, kind of the envy of like feeling it's out of your control. No, it's in your control, but it's
Yeah.
the connections you have to build. How can you go about getting those if you don't have them already?
Yeah, I like that. So always maintain a inner locus of control. Like it's all when things happen, it's always you're always in control in a way. You can always go
Yeah.
do something about it.
Yeah, and like you said with like the Kmart working with customer service, like you don't have control over how they're behaving, but you have control over what you do, and that ultimately impacts the end result of that situation.
Hmm.
So I think learning that as well, like how do you navigate that internal locus of control though? Because there's a lot of skills within that that you need
Yeah.
to hone in on to do it effectively. And yeah, I think and the more experiences you have, the more you tend to be, I feel like internal locus of control rather than external, because you realize the impacts that things have when you make different decisions, and you start to realize like the patterns that happen if I act this way rather than this way.
Yeah.
Then if you do more experiences, you start to more notice more patterns.
Okay, cool. I like that. Yeah, that's definitely a good takeaway that like always maintain like you're always there's always something you can do,
Hmm.
right? And I
Yeah.
think like actually I would even go one step beyond that and say like for example, where I went to school in my undergrad, it was University of Buffalo, amazing school. But they did not offer any type of help with internships or co-ops or things of that nature. You had to go like hunt for yourself.
Mhm.
And later, when I went to grad school, I did my PhD at Northeastern. I would look at the undergrads at Northeastern, and the school would just offer them internships and connect them with jobs at Tesla and other like big tech companies. And initially I was like, oh man, that must have been that must be so nice that like you just kind of get handed these internships, not necessarily handed, like obviously still need to apply and work hard
Mhm.
for them. But I also completely disagree because it was through this hunting process and fighting to the death to get an internship that I had to go make a really nice LinkedIn profile. I had to learn how to market myself. I have to go get
Mhm.
10 times the experience that someone at Northeastern would have who would and in the short term it was very painful and very bizarre and I had to do way more work. But now, like a few years later in my career, I'm like, man, I am so much better off than that person who just got the internship handed to them because I had to go learn all these 10, 15 other skills that forced me to get that internship. And now I can use that in my job. I can use that in anything I do. So not only like you can do something and you can maintain control, there's always a hidden long-term benefit in
Yes,
any type of short-term suffering. Uh,
I totally agree.
yeah, and
Yeah.
again, it sounds like something you're doing very well mindset wise is you're focusing on skill development, and you're like, I'm gonna get better at this thing, and later I may use this opportunity.
Yes. And I think it's also like a mindset that can be really helpful in high school too. Like I always had to work every summer, work really hard, and I had to work
Hmm.
crazy hours before going to engineering school just to be able to afford to move out. And all those things, you know, you look at your friends whose parents are paying for everything, they get to just relax all summer, and you're like,
Yeah,
and I'm here working 80 hours a week, 4 jobs, like just basically barely sleeping, eating ramen all the time. And you're like, this does not feel like the best, but it made me work really hard, and it made me also realize like how much I'm capable of. Like you're capable of
yeah,
pushing yourself a lot further than you think, and getting that work ethic young, I think is really helpful because every job I've had since has felt so easy compared to that summer after grade 12 where I had to work so hard. I'm like, this is easy. Even sitting at a job working, it might be boring, but this is so much easier than it's been before. And I think
Yeah.
that's like a really hidden benefit. And also the soft skill development, because I had to work, I had to develop the soft skills, and even like simple skills like cooking. Because I was a cook as well, and I learned how to do proper cooking. And even I was also a housekeeper, and I did housekeeping. And I came to university, I realized some people don't know how to cook. They don't know how to clean up after themselves because they've had maybe a maid their whole life and a chef their whole life. And those are skills you miss out on. So you can change your perspective on like whether or not um, having all those things having access to all those that help is actually helpful, or with it taking away from some of your technical abilities and your skills you're going to learn. So looking back now, I'm so grateful I had that experience, rather than being like, oh, I wish that I had rich parents that would just pay for everything for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. It would have been, it would have felt good in the meantime, but it would not have led you to all the skills
Yeah,
and experiences.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think you just like experience more when you're like struggling in the beginning, you know, and I think it's really good that you acknowledge that and you embrace it. So if I were to boil down the Madison algorithm for how to get through engineering school, sounds like pick an area you like, step one. Step two, go try a bunch of stuff, talk to
yes.
people, do all these things. And then step three is like assess, recalibrate, and then like repeat. Would you say?
And pivot. Yeah. Yeah. I always like to think of it as like a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
You're always getting that positive feedback, and you can change that. And one way I like to look at it is that your life is a sinusoid.
Yeah.
These are the engineering analogies. Your life is going to go up and down regardless. But you can change the pivot, you can change the DC, you can change the inputs you're giving. You have
Right.
control over that input. So maybe life is going bad, but what inputs can you get to shift that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
trajectory
yeah.
upwards, or that whole sine wave up? But regardless, you're going to have those wiggles through life.
Yeah.
So yeah, when
You always have some power to shift that trajectory even a little bit, right?
yeah, and of course, yeah, awful things happen to people and you have bad experiences or bad situations. But yeah, I get that internal locus of control. What can I do about what happened? Like there's things you can't control, but what can I do is my reaction and the next steps that I take to move forward. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, wow. I really like that. And then I guess the final question regarding that is how do you decide when to pivot and when to persevere?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's important to have mentorship from people who are above you, or professors or people in industry. And there's definitely tons of programs out there and mentorship programs that other people in industry love to help out students and help find their path. So I
Mm-hmm.
think leaning on people again in that aspect, if you feel like you don't know what to, because there will be tough decisions. You don't maybe even have enough knowledge. Getting people that are more experienced than you, that maybe have gone through something similar, and getting input from a lot of people, I think can help you make the better decision if you feel like you might not have the skills or experience yet to know which way is best.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely lean in on mentorship. What about like when you're making decisions regarding again like persevering pivots, like you're getting input, you're getting insight from people. How much of your decision making should be like almost outsourced to, okay, this person said I should do that, I should do it. And how much should it be like, no, like my intuition or I have a feeling that I should do this X, Y, and Z. How do you balance these things?
I would say for me, it's probably like 75% me, because ultimately it's my life and I'm a unique individual, and what works for me, even all these mentors, they've had a different life than I have. So I think it's really important to lean on yourself and have that self-confidence that
Yeah.
you probably do know somewhat what's best for you. But then that 25% is outsourcing, whether that be mentorship or even just searching online and finding additional data to help you make a better decision on like what's typically worked for other people, like even just listening to podcasts or YouTube videos, or searching questions you have and hearing other people's experiences. I think that's another thing. Learning from other people's experiences is really big, because if you don't have to make the mistake yourself, you can hear about the mistake from somebody else and then not do what they did and listen to their recommendation.
Yeah.
I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. So it sounds like use data and inputs from other people, but deep down you always have the final call.
Yeah, I think so. Because
Yeah.
you know you, and you know what you like, and you know where you want to go in life, and other people will have their own biases. And even for you, like you're focusing on electrical, and I'm sure if I went to you talking about mechanical or electrical, you would steer me electrical. Where if I went to talk to a mechanical professor, they would steer me mechanical. So people
Yeah,
have
yeah,
their own
yeah.
biases too that you have to acknowledge, and ultimately you know you know you best, and you're gonna have the biases that align
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
personal beliefs. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I would probably explain to you, oh, this is mechanical, is like, but electrical is way cooler.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I would do the exact opposite. Mechanical, so cool.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, Madison, this is a really, really good conversation. I personally am learning a lot. I can imagine someone watching this would be learning a lot as well. I want to end with like, what general advice do you have for students, whether they're in engineering, they're in high school, like anyone who is watching this, if you could tell them one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, it's always a big question.
Well,
I
it could be a few things, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the main takeaways from this is try different things and don't be afraid to fail. I think a lot of the time that things that had held me back somewhat in the past is being afraid that I won't be good at something or that I won't excel in that or I'll embarrass myself. But that's where you do the most learning. And I think it's important to try and test your skill sets. And you never know, you might be good at something. And if you fail, you also learn something from it. So not being afraid of failure and just being willing to go and try different things and experience life, experience a variety of different internships, co-ops, experiences, maybe not even related to engineering. So you can actually figure out who are you, what works for you, and where should you go in the future.
Yeah, so try things, make mistakes, embarrass yourself,
Yeah,
learn.
and don't be, that was one thing also was turning my social media was like, I don't, going out there is like putting yourself on the spot and being willing to get that criticism. Because of course, if you're on social media, you're gonna get a ton of criticism. Being able to put yourself out there and like that was kind of a social experiment for me is like, can I take the criticism? How do I deal with it? How
Yeah,
and developing that skill set too of like how to take stuff in, how to block it what's not useful and take what is useful. Because there's some that's constructive and there's some that's maybe not so constructive
right, right,
comments.
right.
Yeah, so not being afraid to be embarrassed
Yeah,
because I think a lot of
I think
people,
that's a superpower. Just
yeah,
being able to try things and willingly embarrass yourself and brush it off and move on to the next thing.
yeah. And I think the first time it happens to you, you're like, this is the end of the world. I can't show my face to the world. And then it happens again. You're like, okay, well, I've recovered from the last one. And then it happens over and over again. And you start to just kind of just brush it off. You're like, well, that was awkward or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
a little embarrassing. But I learned this from it and I'll move forward.
Yeah,
So I
like
think
just get
it
up and
also kind
brush
of,
it off.
yeah, it like desensitizes yourself a little bit to it. And you're going to get
Yeah.
criticism and negative feedback and embarrassing moments your whole life. So why not start young and get it out of the
Yeah,
way where they're the
absolutely.
most embarrassing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of your social media, where do people find you? How can people find you online?
Yeah. So it's Aerial Views, ArielViewzs, because Aerial Views with just an S was taken on both
Uh,
Instagram and TikTok.
okay, absolutely. Hopefully, once you're, I don't know, making enough money from your TikTok channel, you can hit up that person and buy the domain from them or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know. Is that even a thing? Can you do that? Can you just,
I think I'm sure you can make something happen. I'm not
yeah.
sure, but
Although who knows?
yeah.
Maybe the Z becomes your trademark, you know? So
Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep changing it eventually, maybe.
yeah. Well, not to worry. I'm gonna put the spelling
Okay.
on the screen and then in the description so people can find you without having
Yeah.
to spell it out for themselves.
Okay,
But yeah.
thank you.
Anyway, thank you so much. It's an amazing conversation, and I'm curious what people thought. If you guys, I don't know, learned something. Obviously go follow Madison. Even if you're not a mechanical engineer, like a lot of her stuff is just like engineering career or lifestyle in general. So I think you should definitely go for it. And yeah, we'll probably have some conversation another time.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was a really awesome conversation. Such an honor to be on your podcast
Yeah,
or YouTube
absolutely.
channel.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean it's just like
podcast YouTube channel.
I don't know what it is. It's just I don't know. Like whatever it is, it's making videos that hopefully help engineering students figure out what they
Same
want to do with their
mission.
lives. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. This is why this
yeah,
works out so nicely, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah.